This is Cole at Disability Rights South Dakota. It's Tuesday, February 20th, 2024. We're over halfway through the legislative session this year, and we wanted to talk about a few of the bills that are still remaining in front of the legislature and talk about their status and how you can become involved. If you have any questions over any of these bills or you'd like to discuss the process that these bills are going through or how you might be able to participate, give us a call at 605-224-8294 or send us an email at drsd@drsdlaw.org. Thanks. So you can see here a list of the bills that we'll be talking about this week. Again, contact us if you have any questions over any of the bills we're about to discuss. House Bill 1082. Change the eligibility requirements and the exempt value of a property tax relief program for disabled veterans and surviving spouses. This bill passed through the House Military and Veterans Affairs Committee as amended, now has been referred to the Senate Taxation Committee. That committee amended the bill to remove the automatic changes tied to inflation and passed it unanimously as amended. The bill has now been placed on the Senate's consent calendar and will be voted on by the full body of that chamber. House Bill 1085. Discuss the venue of appeal to a circuit court. House Bill 1085. Specify the venue of appeal to a circuit court for persons committed to a mental health facility. This bill adds a provision to appeal the commitment to a circuit court of the county in which the mental health facility is located if the appellant is committed to that facility. The bill passed through the House Judiciary Committee and now has been referred to the Senate, and the Senate has referred it to the Senate Judiciary Committee. It will be heard by that committee in room 413 on Tuesday, February 20th from 7:45 to 9:45. House Bill 1093. Make an appropriation to provide a grant for the construction of a facility to provide certain health facilities and services. This bill appropriates from the general fund a sum of $8 million to the Department of Social Services for the purpose of providing a grant to assist in the construction of a facility that will provide all of the following: a specialty rehabilitation pediatric hospital, a specialty school for children under the age of 21, an intermediate healthcare facility for children under the age of 21, and an outpatient rehabilitation pediatric service. The House has referred this bill to the Joint Committee on Appropriations, who will hear this bill in room 362 on Tuesday, February 20th from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. House Bill 1138. Establish a sales tax exemption for certain disabled veterans. This bill would have made an exemption from retail sales and service tax liability from the sales of tangible personal property, any product transferred electronically, and services to a veteran who is rated as permanently and totally disabled from a service-connected disability. The amount of those receipts were not to exceed $25,000 in a given year. This bill was referred to the House Taxation Committee, who then referred the bill to the 41st day. Again, as you remember, there are 40 days in the South Dakota legislative calendar. Therefore, referred to the 41st day means that the bill has been defeated. House Bill 1144. Provide for the study of a community, hope, opportunity, independence, careers, empowerment, success waiver program, and to provide appropriation therefor. There is hereby appropriated from the general fund a sum of $450,000 to the Department of Legislative Audit for the purpose of hiring a contractor to study state and federal laws, regulations, and services relating to the operation and administration of the Choices Waiver Program within the Department of Human Services. This bill was heard before the House Health and Human Services Committee. That committee amended the bill to change the amount appropriated from $450,000 to $1. The bill was then referred to the Joint Committee on Appropriations, where that committee will determine what, if any, amount will be identified to conduct the study that's been proposed in this bill. This bill will be heard in room 362 on Tuesday, February 20th from 9 a.m. to 12 a.m. before the Joint Committees on Appropriations. So again, that'll be room 362 on Tuesday, February 20th from 9 a.m. to noon. House Bill 1165, Institute Procedures for Addressing the Bullying of a Student. This bill would establish procedures for educators to communicate with parents and collaboratively address issues of bullying at school. This bill has been tabled by the House Education Committee. That means that the bill will remain within that committee unless the full body of the House orders the committee to send the bill to the floor. House Bill 1202, establish procedures for the termination of services by a provider through the Choices Waiver Program. This bill would limit the time to complete an appeal of termination from the Choices Waiver Program. It limits the basis for an appeal of a termination on procedural grounds only. And in some cases, the termination of the Choices Waiver Program would become effective in a very short time without the processes of an appeal, subject to certain notice and rental requirements. The bill was initially referred to the House Health and Human Services Committee, which amended the Section 5 of the bill, softening the emergency termination provisions a bit. The committee passed the bill on a 12-1 vote to the full floor of the House. This bill is currently awaiting a vote before the full chamber of the South Dakota House of Representatives. House Bill 1220. This bill would allow an appeal of a decision of the Department of Education regarding special education or related services by civil action against the department. This bill states that a party aggrieved by a decision of the Department of Education under this chapter may bring a civil action with respect to due process complaint notice requesting a due process hearing under the IDEA or Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. A civil action may be filed in either state or federal court without regard to the amount in controversy. The party bringing the action has 30 days from the date of the decision to file a civil action. So under federal law, a party would have 90 days. What this bill would do is states that instead of 90 days, you have 30 days, and you're allowed to limit the amount of time so long as the state has identified that time frame. The House Judiciary Committee heard this bill and passed it on an 11-1 vote. It has now made it through the House and has been referred to the Senate Education Committee. That committee has not yet scheduled this bill for hearing. 1230, amend provisions regarding reports to be done for guardianship and conservatorship and to provide a penalty therefor. This bill stated that a person who knowingly provides false or misleading information in a guardianship report or conservator accounting in writing, it would be guilty of a Class 2 misdemeanor. This bill was referred to the House Judiciary Committee. There it was amended to remove much of the language that I had mentioned, but it was unable to avoid defeat. The committee voted to send this bill to the 41st day. House Bill 1241. Modify the amount of time allowed to an employee to vote in any election in the state. This would have extended the time an employee from any business may take to away from work to vote from 2 hours to 4 hours. And it protects the employee from acts of the employer if they're taking that time to go vote. This bill was referred to the House State Affairs Committee. That committee voted to send this bill to the 41st day. Senate Bill 28. Modify tax refunds for elderly persons and persons with a disability to make an appropriation therefor and to declare an emergency. This bill states that a sum of $425,000 be made available to the Department of Revenue for providing refunds for real property tax and sales tax to elderly and disabled persons. A portion of the appropriated sum may not exceed $20,000 to be used for administrative costs. Refund percentages are dependent on the household characteristics. This bill has made it all the way through the legislative process and has now been delivered to the governor, is sitting on her desk for signature or veto. Senate Bill 46. Authorize the disclosure of a referral status by the Department of Human Services personnel. This bill states that except for otherwise provided for under state law, the Department of Human Services may disclose information to referring individuals and entities for the purposes of relaying the status of the referral. This bill has made it through the legislative process and has now been signed by the President of the Senate, awaiting it to be sent back over to the signature from the Speaker of the House and then to the Governor. Senate Bill 99, modify provisions pertaining to applying for an absentee ballot application. This bill would provide for absentee ballot provisions allowing for application for an absentee ballot up to the time of voting office closure by 5 p.m. typically on the day prior to the election day, or on the day prior to the election day, whichever is later. This bill has been referred to the Senate States Affairs Committee. It has now since moved through the Senate and has now been assigned to the House State Affairs Committee, who will hear this bill in room 414 on Wednesday, February 21st from 7:45 a.m. to 9:45 a.m. Senate Bill 119. Permit the use of tribal identification cards when registering to vote. This bill adds a tribal identification card as a valid form of ID to vote in the South Dakota election and defines a valid tribal identification card. This bill was sent to the Senate States Affairs Committee. There it was amended to state, at the request of a federally recognized Indian tribe located wholly or partly within the state, the Secretary of State shall inform the tribe of the criteria needed to enter into a memorandum of understanding to allow the tribal identification card number to be used on the application for voter registration. There, as amended, the bill was passed unanimously by the committee after it was finished with that committee. However, even though it was placed on the Senate's consent calendar, this legislation was pulled from the consent calendar and discussed by the full body of the Senate. The debate on the floor resulted in yet another amendment, which stated that if the law passed, it would become effective on January 1st, 2025. Senate Bill 119 has now been referred to the House State Affairs Committee, who will hear this bill in room 414 on Wednesday, February 21st from 7:45 to 9:45. Senate Bill 186. Modify provisions pertaining to the voting rights of members of an Indian tribe. This bill was a hog house or vehicle bill. It never really contained any language. It was just a placeholder to be filled in at a later date once it was proposed. But the bill has since been withdrawn by the prime sponsor. Therefore, no action will be taken on this proposed legislation. Senate Bill 209, make an appropriation for grants to assisted living centers and nursing facilities for costs related to telemedicine. This act would appropriate $5 million in federal fund expenditure authority for the expenditure of State Fiscal Recovery Fund American Rescue Plan Act monies to the Department of Health for purposes of providing grants to assisted living centers and nursing facilities, licensed in accordance with state law, to purchase and install technology and infrastructure for telemedicine. Senate Bill 209 was referred to the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, who in turn referred the matter to the Joint Committee on Appropriations. This bill will be heard in room 362 on February 23rd. That's this coming Friday from 8 a.m. to 12 noon. Senate Joint Resolution 501. Again, this is not binding. If this were to pass, it wouldn't be binding law. It is a resolution which states it proposing and submitting to the voters at the next general election an amendment to the Constitution of the state of South Dakota, authorizing the state to impose work requirements on certain individuals who are eligible for expanded Medicaid. This recommendation to propose and submit to the voters is a springing South Dakota constitutional amendment to create a work requirement for Medicaid beneficiaries who have not been diagnosed as being physically or mentally disabled. The bill was referred to the state the Senate State Affairs Committee, where it will be passed out of that body on a 7-1 vote. Having passed through that committee, it was brought to the full body of the Senate, who also passed it. The bill has been crossed over to the House, who referred the matter to the House State Affairs Committee, who have not yet scheduled this bill for hearing. As you can see here, we've made it through the bills that we were wanting to discuss today. Thanks for watching this week's bill update. This is February 20th, 2024, and again, we're almost through this legislative year. If you have any questions over any of the bills that we're watching or any of the legislative activities, give us a call at Disability Rights South Dakota. Our number is 605-224-8294. You can also reach out by email. Our email is drsd@drsdlaw.org. And thanks again. We'll see you next week.